Hey everybody, Simone here with Bulletproof Business Growth, as always with some ideas and insights, what to pay attention to when you are growing and scaling your business. So today we'll dive into a topic that affects every growing business, the profound impact that your managers have on your employees and ultimately, of course, on your entire business success. So, as business owners, here's the problem. Let's face the hard truth. As you grow, you'll reach a point where you can't personally oversee every aspect of your business. You may try, but that doesn't generally go well. If you try, the chances are you will actually become the bottleneck of your business. You'll stand in the way of growth because at this point, it's time to hire better people who are better at what they do than you are. And honestly, many of our clients also don't really like being leaders. They love what they do. They love what they got into business for. And, they grow and suddenly they need people. And then they find themselves in this manager role. And often they are not really good at it and they don't like doing it. And so then this dream becomes, oh, if I could just hire somebody who could take over all the people stuff so I could just focus on the business. So that's when they hire a manager, hoping they will seamlessly extend and create leadership. But that's really where many of you are hitting the wall. So recent data shows that nearly 70% of employees would leave a job because of a bad manager. I mean, you may have heard this saying, people don't leave companies, they leave leaders. So it's a staggering number when you think about that. 70% of people would leave a job because of a bad manager. So that should really concern every single business owner. But there's a flip side, right? That's equally as powerful because that also means that your managers have the potential to be the second most influential people in your employees' lives, like right after their family members. So think about this for a moment. In a global survey, and this was a Gallup poll, in a global survey across 52 countries, 31% of employees say that a manager or organizational leader had the most positive influence on their daily lives. In the United States, that number is 30%, nearly equal to family influence at 34%. So this shouldn't be surprising when you consider that Americans spend an average of about 38 hours a week at work. That's a whole lot more time than 60% of other countries, 62% of other countries do. So Americans spend a ton of time at work. So, of course, the workplace relationships we form have an enormous influence on how we feel and how we function. So many of you are thinking, great, I'll just hire a manager and then all my leadership and employee problems are solved. I don't have to deal with this anymore. Now I can finally focus on my business. But from, what we're talking about right now, this couldn't be further from the truth. And this misconception or this ideal is costing small businesses dearly in, turnover, productivity, and of course, growth potential. So let's dig a little deeper into why simply hiring managers is just not enough. I mean, when you think about it, a lot of times managers themselves are struggling. So I've seen some research that says that they're more likely to be stressed, angry, sad, and lonely than non-managers because they have a lot of responsibility. They have a lot to deal with. So you're putting these overburdened individuals in charge of nurturing your most valuable resource, your people, without them having the proper support systems. So secondly here, employees have specific expectations from managers that go far beyond just managing tasks. And that's managers manage tasks. That's why I like to make that distinction between, managers and leaders. We want to go for leaders. But according to research, what they're looking for are four things. What they're really looking for beyond the task management is hope, trust, compassion, and stability. And those aren't soft, optional qualities. They're fundamental needs that directly impact performance. And you've heard me talk about human needs theory a lot. These are just some subcategories of the big ones that we often talk about. So also in today's business environment, which, there's economic uncertainty, there are layoffs, there's constant change, you never know what's actually going on. Providing those four things may kind of almost seem impossible. So how can a manager promise stability, when the business landscape is shifting daily and it seems completely insane? So many small business owners set their managers up for failure right from the start. I mean, think about how a lot of people become managers. They're really good at what they do. And then suddenly the next step that makes sense is, you should just be leading this initiative, leading this project, leading this department, leading this business area because you're so good at this. So, what business owners tend to do is they promote these high performers without any leadership training. And so these people are being promoted, but there's nothing in place. There's no fundamental operational systems that actually support good management. So nothing is in place. And another thing is that most companies don't even define, what does success look like beyond just hitting some basic numbers, if they even know what those basic numbers are. I mean, so many of our clients, when they start working with us, they've been in business for long periods of time. They've been working with, some of them, pretty big teams, and they may not even have clear KPIs. They may not even really be able to show their managers, their employees, what the success numbers are. So what does success mean? So of course this creates a completely dysfunctional cycle. Under-equipped managers struggle. Then of course that means your employees disengage. And then of course that means performance drops. And here is your business growth that stalls immediately. And you end up with the worst of both worlds, whereas you're paying for the expense of a management layer without the benefits of enhanced performance and stability, which is of course what you were looking for when you hired these people. And you were also looking for getting more off your plates, but also more off your emotional bandwidth. So, of course, the consequences in that are your best people leave, your culture deteriorates, your ability to grow consistently becomes compromised, and ironically, you'll end up more involved in the day-to-day operations than before because you're constantly putting out fires. Now you have external fires that you're already fighting, and now you have internal fires because nothing is working super well inside your business. So how do we break the cycle? Let's talk about practical steps to ensure that your managers become actually leaders so that they're a positive influence, the positive influence they need to be. So I'm making this distinction over and over because I really want to reframe how we think about management success, right? It's not just about hitting target. It's about creating an environment, a culture where people can do their best work, right? Managing up and down means as a manager, you manage down to your people to support them, for them to do their best work, and you manage up for your superiors to help them do their best work above you. So as a manager, as a leader, your job is to help everybody else do their best work. That's what mid-level management is all about. When these researchers talk about managers providing hope, what they really mean is providing a compelling or creating a compelling future for their employees. So your managers need to help the team members develop skills and see pathway for growth, for a future, that, whether that's within your company or beyond. But that's, when we talk about how important it is that everybody in your company, no matter what level they're at, that they need a growth plan, that they need to really understand your vision, understand how they're part of it, understand how they can actually influence company strategy and how they're a part of that. That is a huge, huge piece. So, of course, this requires you to build development pathways in your business. So part of that is creating clear job levels with defined skills, implement regular career conversations, and that's where you would talk about these growth plans. You have a budget for training and growth opportunities. And look, I know for many of you, when you're so in the operational grind, when you're so in the day-to-day stuff, these might sound like nice to haves, and you might really think about that. You want to have this. And then in your brain, there's this we'll get there when? One day, once we have A, B, C, D, then we'll get to that, right? But this is not a nice to have. These are essential infrastructure pieces for effective management, for effective leadership. And there's really no way you're going to be able to create scalable and sustainable growth without that in place. So we want to build trust through consistency, because trust is built when words match actions over time, right? Trust is built when words act. Oh God, I can't talk today. Trust is built when words match actions over time. So this is the consistent thing where people see that what you say will actually come to fruition. And this is not just a one-time deal. This happens over and over. So your managers need clear guidelines on making commitments and following through. So what are the guidelines and how to follow through? So part of that might mean implement simple systems like commitment tracking in team meetings. Train managers to make realistic promises and communicate proactively when circumstances change. And this is what accountability really means, right? This means we're setting expectations, and the expectations are somewhat realistic, but then to communicate proactively when circumstances change. I mean, this is so important, this piece, because this is what you want to model to your employees so that they act the same way, because that is really what accountability means. I mean, there are tons of things that could change somebody's ability to deliver externally that they have no control over, but the accountability aspect come in when they proactively take the initiative to communicate about it, do what they can, call in the troops, but there's transparency all the way through. So it's very, very important that you model this behavior yourself. And remember, you can't expect managers to build trust with employees if you don't have a trusting relationship with your manager. So this is where you have to be really transparent about business realities and involve them in appropriate decision making. So rather than thinking, the next thing in here is we talked about cultivating empathy as a business practice. So that's one of the steps to take here. And rather than thinking of compassion as a top-down emotion, reframe it as an empathetic understanding that places managers and employees on equal footing. Because this is where you can create structural rapport by building, regular check-ins into your operational rhythms. So train managers in exploratory conversation techniques. This means active listening. This means asking questions like, help me understand your perspective, rather than jumping to conclusions. We teach a very specific feedback structure because it's so important that when you give somebody feedback, right, which is constructive criticism, when you help them understand how to do something better, that they also feel like they have a voice in that. They can actually give you their perspective, and that you actually want to hear it, and that you will consider it in what's going forward. So develop clear policies for supporting through supporting them through this kind of cycle. And things, when people don't perform, it doesn't necessarily always have something to do with work, right? This could be something going on at home. And building trust and showing compassion also means that you support your employees through hardships. So that could mean making flexible work arrangements possible. There's a lot of talk about mental health, so having mental health resources, any emergency assistance. When employees know that there are systems in place to support them, they feel valued even when things are difficult. And that's how you want them to feel, because that's how, when trust and empathy are part of the workplace, that also means they show up for you. They go the extra mile. They bring it even when it's not really theirs to bring. So another thing you want to consider is really good communication. So the stability aspect, right? Sometimes you don't have control over what's happening. In today's business environment, it's unpredictable, and the most important stability you can really deliver here and help people have is consistent, honest communication. So that's when I really encourage you to implement regular business updates where you share appropriate information. I mean, you don't want to share everything, but it's kind of the need to know. And you really have to ask yourself, what do people need to know so that they feel like they know what's going on, they know how it affects them. So you want to share this information about company direction and performance. Create communication like chain of commands where important information really flows reliably through all the different layers of your organization without distortion. What we teach in our program is we teach people to have these very transparent, collaborative meetings that follow the same structure at every single level of the organization, so that everybody every single week understands, hey, where are we? How are we doing in accordance to following our plan? What's different? How have priorities changed and why? And how does that affect me? And what do I need to do going forward so that I can support the organization? So, of course, this can only happen when your managers are trained and part of the system. So help your managers train them to differentiate between what they know, what they don't know, and what they can and what they can't share. So this honest acknowledgement of uncertainty is far more stabilizing than false promises. Even when your news that you're sharing is not necessarily good news, even if it's not necessarily what they want to hear, if they trust that you keep them in the loop and that they always know what's going on, that they need to know what they need to know, they're much more likely to actually stick with you than the other way around. And then, of course, a huge piece to implement, and that's another one that's absolutely not a nice to have, it's a must have, is build operational systems that support good management. So good management does not happen in a vacuum. It requires operational systems that support good leadership. So, we talk a lot about the right meetings, and a huge one to always have is one-on-one meetings between managers and direct reports, and having those follow a very specific standard, a very specific structure. They're prepared, they are collaborative, and it creates this format that balances accountability with support. So you want to develop performance management systems that really focus on growth rather than just evaluation. Think about this, and I did a podcast on this a few weeks ago. how so many companies, the only feedback people get is once a year in their performance evaluation, and that is about a year too late. So document your expectations for managers in a leadership playbook so everybody understands what the structure is that you're following, so that your business doesn't just have a business playbook, it also has a leadership and systems playbook. And include not just what they should achieve, but also how to achieve it in alignment with your culture and your values. And also invest in training. You know, we're not talking about generic leadership courses here, but practical skills development directly tied to your business, to what your business needs. And then, of course, create a platform where you have a peer support system where managers can learn from each other. So, you know, part of that is having those weekly action review meetings where managers get together and they talk about their experiences, not just in a business context, but also in a leadership context. So, you know, as a conclusion here, as a tie-up, so the research is clear. Managers have a profound impact on your employees' lives and your business success. But simply hiring managers is not enough. So you need to build the leadership and operational infrastructure that really enables not just your employees, but your managers to succeed as a part of helping their charges to succeed, right? Their directs. And the good news is really that this investment, yes, it's an investment in time and energy and in money, but it pays enormous dividends when your managers can provide the four that we were talking about: hope, trust, and compassion and stability. Your employee engagement soars, and that's one of the biggest problems right now, is that employee engagement is at an all-time low. You want productivity to increase, you want turnover to decrease, and you're finally able to scale without sacrificing quality, which of course that's everybody's biggest concern. And the choice really is yours here. You can continue the cycle of hiring managers without support systems and having a good foundation, and you will still wonder why your team isn't performing and you're paying for this. Or you can recognize that effective management is a system. It's not just a role, and you have to build it from the top down. This is you who starts this, you who sets this up, and then you may have people who help you implement this, but somebody has to put the system in place, and most likely at most of our clients' levels, this is you. So remember, your business will only grow as far as your leadership allows. So I would really encourage you to make that investment now and watch your path to scaling become a lot more achievable, a lot more possible, and also sustainable on this very path. So thanks for listening today. Until next time, focus on building these systems, not just adding bodies, and your business will thank you for it. Make sure that you listen to our new training, watch our new training. It's at Biz Scaling Blueprint, BIZ Scaling Blueprint.com. Check out the video there. It has a lot of really good information, and I will see you next time.